Year 5 Season 1 saw the introduction of the new Descent mode. Through two phases of the PTS, Descent and its difficulty were adjusted to provide a better experience on launch, but the only comments I've seen lately are the mode is too hard, especially in a group setting. Is Descent too difficult? Hello everyone, welcome back. The Descent mode strips you of all the things you have and makes you build your way towards the ultimate boss, your nemesis. Now, following feedback from Phase 1 of the PTS Massive, they made some changes to the mode that, generally speaking, made it a little bit more difficult. The changes made were better balance between health, damage and armor, increased difference between veteran, elite and boss level enemies, and adjusted the rational level design system used for balancing and difficulty scaling. For the post-Nemesis difficulty, they drastically increased the enemy difficulty and scaling to avoid players being able to basically play the mode endlessly. And on the Division Day, I think it was Morton who said that that will pretty much not happen now. Now, with Descent having been live for a couple of weeks, the feedback I'm seeing is it's just too difficult. Today I decided to do two polls to gauge basically what the community has to say, and yeah, here are the results. We've got Twitter results and we've got the community feedback poll here on YouTube. Now overall it's pretty much even, 50-50 almost. Now before I talk about the Nemesis fight itself and from a solo player's experience, and I'll get to the group experience shortly, I actually found the loops themselves and the arena bosses as well really not that hard at all. In fact, I'd say borderline easy. I'd probably put it in the difficulty of hard in the world tiers if you were to put it anywhere. And you know, that's coming from someone who considers themselves casual now and has real trouble with legendary content. If you didn't know, I've basically not done any legendary content, firstly because I'm too lazy to get in a group, and I've tried it on my own and I just have too much. It's just too much for me. Now, I'm not trying to belittle anyone that does find it hard because everyone is different. I just think Descent is actually pretty easy until you get to the Nemesis fight. Now, I have played some group Descent to get a feel for that as well, because what I didn't want to do is just do a video on the solo experience. It makes a lot more sense for me to do solo and also get the group experience as well. Now, just like the solo experience, I found the loops and the arenas fairly easy, but you can obviously see the increase in difficulty as you expect when you're grouped up, because you know, when you're grouped up, you're meant to all of you are meant to kind of face off at one enemy at once, and that's why the enemy health is much higher. You guys know how group settings work. I did, however, see a disproportionate difference in difficulty depending on your group size. I found a group of 2 and 3 players to feel very much like the solo difficulty, where you can pretty much take on each enemy by yourself as a player. But that's not something I found in a group of 4. It felt a lot more difficult, and for the first time actually I found myself getting close to running out of ammo, which has not happened to me as a solo player, and it didn't happen to me in a group of 2 or 3 players as well. Now, with that said, I still never found it that difficult, and I did run it with a match-made group, so if you had an organised group, I can imagine it being still fairly easy still, even in a group of 4, at least, like I said, at least until you get to Nemesis. So I think you guys understand where I'm at with the loops and the arenas leading up to Nemesis. So what about Nemesis then, and that fight? Well, see, this is where I think most people are struggling, and I can definitely see why. Nemesis is a tough fight, but there are ways to beat Nemesis, and there are a few you should probably do along the way. There are a few things I would recommend you do. You know, everything you buy, every weapon that you choose, and every skill that you choose along the way should be in preparation for Nemesis. You shouldn't really be thinking about the next room, the next loop, the next arena. It should all be leading up to Nemesis. Even before you go into the Nemesis fight, you can actually purchase you know, incendiary bullets or explosive bullets, whatever's available, which really makes the fight that much easier. Now, from a solo experience, it's difficult. There's no doubt, but I've yet to actually fall against the Nemesis. Actually, that's a lie. The first time I ever played Nemesis was on PTS Phase 1, and I went down then, and I think that's just because I really didn't understand how much damage Nemesis could do. But since then, yeah, I've not really gone down. I always remember to have a distraction talent, like the decoy, some kind of rifle, the M1A, or anything really, a SIG, and stay as far away as possible, use cover to cover, that sort of stuff. And that's worked for me every single time. Now, I did make a video on what I found best to run in Descent, and if you haven't watched that, I'd go and check it out, because I think that's going to be useful for any of you guys who are struggling to get to Descent and then beat Descent, of course. Nemesis, of course. Now, from a group perspective, I've not played Nemesis in a group of 4 yet. I've done a group of 3 and found it easier than the solo experience, actually, because, you know, the solo experience, Nemesis basically is just on you, right? You can't really remove aggro from you because it's 1v1, but obviously in a group of 3 you can remove aggro. You can have 3 people just shooting down one Nemesis, and I found that overall that it was just a little bit easier. Now, the group of 3 that I did play it in and I beat it, was actually today as I've been recording this video. That was, again, match made. And, you know, sure, sometimes you're going to be matched with people who are maybe a little bit more inexperienced in the game, so you might find it difficult. But for a competent group of 3 people, I feel like you should be able to defeat Nemesis, you know, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. I think the same will apply to a group of 2 as well. Now, that's not to say it can't be difficult, because, you know, sniper turrets that the Nemesis throws out will almost one-shot you in a group of 3, and I would always recommend when you're getting all the you're getting your buffs as you're going up, that you put a lot of your buffs into defense rather than damage, because I feel like defense is actually what you need more than damage at the end. I've heard, however, that in a group of 4 it's actually a real struggle. In fact, I've watched other players play in a group of 4, and it does it does look a lot more difficult when compared to solo and up to 3 players. So this is where I think Massive need to focus the inevitable balancing that will come out of all of this dialogue. So going back to the question, is Descent too difficult? Overall, I would say no. In fact, if I want to chill out a little bit, much like Countdown, I will gravitate towards Descent. If I don't want to just go do your open world stuff, then I'll probably gravitate towards Descent, and yeah, I'd probably gravitate towards Descent more than I would Countdown, actually. Not so much for the rewards, but just maybe it's just the fresh experience, I'm not sure. If I've not beat Nemesis for that week, then yeah, definitely I'll be going over to Descent to do that, because, you know, I want to get the lore comms. Some I think is absolutely ridiculous, by the way, but that's for another video. Now, Nemesis is not easy whether you are solo or in a group, but the solo experience and up to 3 players is far easier than a group of 4. Now, with a good group of players, I feel like Descent is pretty much a breeze, as I said, up to 3 players. Not easy mode, nothing like that, but, you know, maybe challenging difficulty in the open world. Some instances, if you go to some of the rooms on hard, then you're looking at kind of heroic difficulty. But, you know, in a group of people, heroic difficulty is pretty much a breeze for most groups of people. Massive, however, do need to address the 4-man group scaling, which, like I said, it appears to be way off. It's so much more difficult in a group of 4 compared to a group of 3, 2, or just that single player. In fact, one of the matchmade games I played, it started off as a group of 4, and that's when I realised just how much more difficult it was, and then it dropped down to a group of 3, and that's where I found out how much easier it was. I was dropping enemies pretty easy in a group of 3, whereas in a group of 4, it was taking me much, much, much longer. And as I said, it was really disproportionate, so hopefully they go in and make some fixes there. Now, could Massive introduce difficulty levels? That actually might be a good way to go, but more to come on the pros, cons, and possible solutions in a future video. It's just a bit of food for thought. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. If you did enjoy the video, leave a like down below, and perhaps hit up the comments with your thoughts as well, because I'd love to hear what you guys have had to say. I've had a lot of feedback on Twitter, a lot of feedback on this community, and at the end of the day, I think personally, and I'll do this in my review, I do like Descent, but it has some glaring issues, and I really feel like they need to get the balancing right here so that people in groups of 4 can have the same experience a solo player would have, which is, in my opinion, a pretty fun experience. Until the next one, epic out.